So, for whatever reason, you've decided you want to try playing role-playing games by yourself, solo style, and you've run into a few complications. I am here to help. Hey everyone, it's Trevor Devall of Me, Myself, and I, a YouTube channel about solo role-playing, as well as many other things all related to role-playing games. So, you have been thinking, maybe I want to get into the solo thing, maybe I want to try this for whatever reason, maybe you find yourself at home alone all the time, but you still run a game, or you want to use the tools of solo role-playing to enhance and increase and better your GMing style with your live action group, whether that's online or in real person. Well, I'm here to give you a few little tips on how you can improve your performance. There are 9 of them that I have for you, just kind of touching on a few things, but the 9th one is by far the most important one, so be sure to stay to the end of the video to find out what that is. Also, I want to thank all of you, my subscribers and my patrons. Right now, we're trying to double our subscribers to 20,000 and to get our patrons to 500. And if we do that, I will release a special behind-the-scenes video that goes into great detail of how I make the show and how I play the game as well. So if you're interested in supporting the channel, by all means, that is a great way to do it. So let us begin with tip number 1. Be your own audience. Now, that may seem obvious. You are presumably the only one in the room when you're playing a role-playing game by yourself. But what I mean is, remember that you are the primary audience. So if you're not enjoying the process, if you're not enjoying the character or the game, you can change it. You are the producer, but you are also the audience. Don't be too hard on yourself, especially at the beginning. It takes a lot of time to get used to this particular style, no matter how you're doing it, whether you're recording it like I do on video, or whether you're journaling, or whether you're not really keeping track of anything at all except for a few little sketchy notes. We will come back to that point. But do remember that you are the driver of this car as well as the passenger. So you are in control of how the game goes. Always remember that. Be your own audience, not your own critic. Point number 2, do not overdo it with random tables. This is a big one. And I have a lot of experience with this. It is very tempting to go out and buy all of these different randomizers, like the Book of Random Tables, or the Tome of Adventure Design, or any of the supplements I currently have for sale via DriveThruRPG in the description box below. And that is another good way to support the show, by the way. If you buy the product through the link, it helps the channel. No, what I mean is, focus your desires when it comes to what you want to randomize. If you have 3 different books, all dealing with dungeon bits and bobs, let's say, the contents of a room in a dungeon. If you've got 3 different books and they've all got different tables, they're all going to have slightly different focuses, they're all going to have slightly different contents. Try to pick one, because if you have 3 different books in front of you, you will spend, I can almost guarantee it, all of your time flipping through books, looking for just the right table to roll on instead of actually, playing the game. So be discerning with your tables once you look at them. By all means, pick them up, purchase them, look at them, go through them, see which ones inspire you, and then, focus on one. You can still use all of the tables at different times. Just try not to use too many at the same time, because that's going to hobble you. Too much of a good thing can be a bad thing. Point number 3, choose a role-playing game engine, a system that you know and you like. A lot of you out there will be doing this with D&D, because that is by far the most common and popular fantasy role-playing game in existence. That is not my game of choice, but it could be yours. In the end, it doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is, do you like that game? And do you know it well enough that you don't have to spend all these hours paging through books of rules to see what happens? Because anything that impedes your time playing the game when you're playing solo is going to probably make you not want to keep playing. It's just like when you're running a live game as a GM with your players around the table. If some rules issue comes up and you as the GM really want to know what the rule is, yes, you could spend the next 10 minutes looking exactly for the correct rule. I've been guilty of that myself sometimes. But as the players, that really sucks, because now they're sitting there waiting for you to find the rule. Most players are going to be bored waiting for that to happen. So when you're GMing and you want to find a rule, if you can quickly find it, great. If not, make a ruling, make a mental note to look it up later so that you don't make the mistake again, and move on with the game. That applies in solo role-playing too. If you spend all your time looking at rules, looking to verify certain rules of the game engine you've chosen because you don't know it well enough, that's going to kill your experience, probably. Probably. Again, everybody's different, but this has been my experience. I started in Season 1 with Savage Worlds for one very simple reason. I knew Savage Worlds very well, and I liked it. It was super fun. So for me, that was an obvious choice. Pick a game system that you like and you know well enough to be able to dive into, because that is going to make the game way more fun for you. Point number 4, and this is a huge one. Trust your instincts. Trust the Oracle. Trust the process. One of the greatest things about the oracles, about the randomization of events using something like the Mythic GM emulator, although there are many, many more oracles than that, is that it allows you to indulge in your imagination in a structured way. That is so crucial. And if you trust that process, if you allow your own instincts, along with the results of the tables, to shape what comes next, that's the whole heart of the game right there. But if you stop and you hum and you haw and you don't trust yourself and you don't like the choices you've made, that's going to sabotage you. Now, you don't always like the choices you make and you don't always like the way things turn out. That happens. If it really sucks, you can make a different choice. Remember, you're the audience. You do whatever you want to do. Trust your instincts, trust the Oracle, trust the framework of the Oracle system. Because if you allow it to provide the structure for your imagination, you will find that your choices will flow much, much more naturally. It's almost impossible to create in a vacuum. You know, if someone just says, be creative, go, you can't start with nothing. You have to have a structure for your brain to be able to harness your own creativity. That's what the Oracle system does. So by all means, trust it and trust yourself. Point number 5, decide what style of game you want. A lot of people overlook this, and that can be a problem. What do I mean by that? Do you want to have the style of game a la an old school dungeon crawl where a bunch of zero-level nobodies walk into a meat grinder and all get killed except one, and the one that escapes goes on to become an actual, character class at level 1? That's Dungeon Crawl Classics, by the way, DCC, which is a hugely fun game. It is not a fun game if you go into it thinking, but I want this to be about the narrative. I want this to be able I want this game to tell the story of this lone hero who escapes the dungeon and goes on to save the world against the dragons and etc. and all that stuff. If you have that attitude and you use a game like DCC, you're going to be quickly disappointed. There are a multitude and plethora, whatever. There's a bunch of games out there that can facilitate virtually every gaming style you can imagine. Make sure you pick one that jives with your own style, jives with your own instincts, and jives with what you want the game to be about. Do you want it to be a hardcore characters dropping and being replaced every 3 sessions, and it's really brutal and huge critical hits and life is cheap? Great, there are many games to do that. I tend to love those games, but not all the time. Sometimes I want to play a game about a character who achieves great things and overcomes incredible odds and goes on to become a hero and amidst fanfare and all the wonderful stuff. There are many games that do that too. Whatever your style is, make sure you understand it and make sure you make that choice, because if you try and mix the styles halfway through, you're going to be disappointed. So, plenty of time to play all the styles as well. This is totally up to you. You can do whatever you want. Point number 6, take the time to make notes about what has happened. You don't have to write a novel. You don't have to write a journal. You don't have to record on video or on audio. You don't have to do any of that. But at the very least, if you are solo role-playing, you want to keep a record of what happened. Because if you don't, it's very, very, very easy to get lost in the details, especially if you wait a week between sessions. It's hard enough for me in my own live games if I wait a week between sessions, which most often I have to do, obviously, people have lives, to remember what happened before and remember what the choices of the characters were, remember what NPCs are doing, whatever the case is. Notes are very important. They don't have to be fancy, but they have to be legible by you, since you're the only one going to be reading them. Keep your thoughts together. Now again, the Mythic GM emulator has this already built in with its lists system, lists of NPCs and lists of threads. So that system I find to be very, very valuable when it comes to helping you keep track of your thoughts and the experiences and the events of the character. So keep notes, keep track of what happened. It'll help. Point number 7, focus on what you like and what you want to see in the game. Do you want to see a game about heroes who tame dragons and use them to fight off enemy invaders in an elven forest. Great. But whatever it is that you want, remember, this is what you want. Allow the game to evolve in whatever direction it's going to evolve, but always make sure you're having fun. That's really the whole point of point number 7. Don't overcomplicate things. It's sometimes easy to let lists of NPCs and plot threads get wildly out of control. You decide which NPCs are important. You decide what events in the world are important. You decide that. Keep it simple. Keep your focus on what you like to see. Point number 8. How do you start? Where do you start? Well, I like to start in media res, which is Latin for basically in the middle of the action. If you have an idea of a scene that you want your character to start out in, that's awesome. But sometimes you don't. Sometimes you have no idea. In season 1 of Me, Myself, and I had no idea how Simon was going to start. So I randomly determined it using the oracles. And we discovered that the first scene was his best friend being led off to execution, and Simon was trying to save his life. That was the very first thing that happened. Now that is a great thing to do, because immediately it puts you as the player into the position of having to make a choice and take action and do something. Because if you don't take action and do something, nothing's going to happen. So start in the middle of a decision point. For the character, start in the middle of the action. It doesn't have to be a fight. That's not what I mean by action. Start in the middle of a moment where the character must take action and do something. There's an old trick in screenwriting called come in late and get out early. What that means is if you're forming a scene, and the same goes for, solo role-playing, you are basically crafting a scene, although the dice are determining randomly what the details of the scene are. But it basically means the same thing. You want to get to the heart of the scene as soon as you can, because that's where the fun is. The fun of the scene, if your character is at a masquerade ball trying to talk to the nobles and find where the secret MacGuffin is hidden, then get right to that. Don't waste time with all of the preparations the character has to make in order to get invited to the ball, or to forge an invitation, or to case the joint looking for exits in case he needs them later, or to negotiate with the guards, or maybe bribe them to get in. I mean, all that stuff can be fun, but it can also be very pedantic. And when you're starting, you want to start, boom, you want to start big with something fun and exciting, because that's going to help you want to go further and go into the next scene. Again, I'm not saying start with a chase or a fight, although you can. I mean, start at a point where the character must make a choice. That is crucial. So, and if you don't know what your opening scene is at all, just dice for it randomly. Take your oracle tables and dice and go with your instincts with whatever comes up, and just start. Just start, because no game is going to happen unless you take the first step. And finally, point number 9, the big one, the most important thing. I get asked all the time, but how do you do this? My character doesn't really, do anything. Nothing happens in my game. My character doesn't make any choices. I have no imagination. I see that one a lot, which is very strange to me. The answer to all of these questions is a very simple one, but a very crucial one. You must introduce conflict into every scene the character is in, into every situation. Conflict is the heart of any dramatic enterprise, whether that's a role-playing game, whether that's a theatrical play, whether that's a film script. Any dramatic enterprise whatsoever requires conflict. But what exactly does conflict mean? In the RPG world, in the D&D world, it's easy to say, oh, well, that means a fight with orcs. It can, but there are basically 3 types of conflict. What they used to call man versus man, man versus nature, and man versus himself. So basically, man versus man is your character has a physical antagonist that they must contend with. Simplest example, you're right in the castle and there's guards trying to stop you. The guards are the antagonist, that's man versus man. That is your character fighting an external force in order to achieve what they want. Conflict. I want a thing, I must overcome an obstacle to get that thing. That is the heart of all drama, no matter what venue you're in. Man versus nature. You're trying to get to the castle, but there's a flash flood. Those of you who watch my show know that I love flash floods. They're hilarious. So now you must overcome the force of nature that is now the obstacle. Different type of conflict, but conflict all the same. And finally, man versus himself, an internal conflict, a difficult choice presents itself to your character, and your character must now decide what to do. Conflict. Without conflict, you have no scene, and therefore you have no role-playing game. So a lot of the times when people say to me, how do you keep things moving? How do you come up with something? introduce conflict. And if you have no idea what could possibly be in conflict with your character in that moment, that's what the oracle's for. Roll the dice, consult the chart, and go with the first thing that comes into your mind. Raymond Chandler used to say, if nothing's going on, then throw in a bunch of guys with guns and start shooting. Or, that's a terrible paraphrase. But basically it means if you're stuck, have something happen that challenges your character. It doesn't matter what that is. It doesn't matter whether they get physically attacked or whether there's an earthquake and suddenly they have to escape the building or whether, they're confronted with the terrible choice about whether they should do this thing or that thing. It doesn't matter what the conflict is. What matters is that there is a conflict and that you, the character, must overcome that conflict in order to achieve your desired result. Remember, characters in a role-playing game must want something, otherwise they're boring. A character must want something, and in order for that character to achieve that thing, they must overcome the obstacles. That is conflict. Without conflict, you have no game. So those are my 9 tips on how to be a more effective solo gamer. I hope it was useful to you, and if it was, or if it wasn't, let me know in the comments below. And if you want to help support the show, if you like what I'm doing here, please do hit like and subscribe. And if you want to help support us on Patreon as well, that would be great. We are trying to double our numbers, as I said at the top of the video, so that would be awesome if we could get there. Also, I have a big merchandise announcement that's coming soon. We're going to start providing some very interesting things for those of you who are interested in such things, so keep your eyes to the channel for that. Thanks for watching, and we will see you next time on Me, Myself, and I.